Chapter 3 of this epic saga between the Minnesota Lynx and New York Liberty is in the books. I'm Terry Horstman. I'm with Jackie Powell. We will break down what the 86-80 win for the Lynx right now here on Locked On Women's Basketball.
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello. Happy Monday, actually Saturday, as we are talking today, immediately after the Minnesota Lynx, New York Liberty nationally televised game on Saturday afternoon. You are listening to this on Minnesota Monday on the Locked On Podcast Network. Locked On Women's Basketball here for you 6 days a week. Special shout out to our everydayers who never miss an episode and make Locked On Women's Basketball your first listen every day. My name's Terry Horstman. I've been the Minnesota Lynx beat writer at the Next since 2023. Very happy to be with you here today and very happy to be with my colleague Jackie Powell, who covers the New York Liberty. And we are going to get into everything in Lynx Liberty 2025 Part 3. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Download the Game Time app today. Jackie, holy buckets. Another game filled with plenty to talk about. I know we're on a little bit of a time crunch here. I don't think we'll have any difficulty filling 25 minutes to a half an hour talking about what just happened. At the end of the day, it's an 86-80 win for the Lynx, who are now 28-5. What is on your mind? What is the first big takeaway for you after what we just saw this afternoon?
I think what's on my mind is this free throw disparity that the Liberty dealt with in the past two games, not just against the Lynx, but also against the Aces. I think against the Aces, which was on Thursday night, I believe. No, Wednesday night. My mistake there. They played a back-to-back on the West Coast prior to this game. They were in LA on Tuesday night. They didn't really play much defense, but they won with a lot of offense. They saved that defense against the Aces, but then they just sort of lost steam and forgot how to box out. And the Aces, I believe they had over, I don't know, it was 20 plus free throws, and Liberty had much, much less. But the point is that trend continued today, where the Lynx
sure did.
at 33 free throws, and they missed 10 of them, which was wild as well. Like, I don't know when Kayla McBride misses free throws, but she missed
almost never.
Yeah. But on the New York side, they only attempted 8. Sabrina Ionescu only attempted 2. And so, it was very interesting because in the post-game press conference with Sabrina Ionescu, Jonquel Jones, and head coach Sandy Brondello, us reporters, we had to ask about it. It was one of the first things we asked about. And the players really just did not want to be fined. So it wasn't about what they said, but it was their facial expressions. It was, Sabrina Ionescu was pissed. She was pissed off. Jonquel Jones was just sort of sitting there with sort of like an "I told you so" look on her face. And then Sandy Brondello just decided to speak for the group. She was like, she said to the players, she said, "Do you want to get fined? Then don't say anything." And Sandy continued, and she was like, "Are we not driving hard enough? I don't know. You tell me." And then toward the end of the presser, Sabrina briefly mentioned the disparity. She said, it's tough to win a game with shooting 8 free throws in this league. Like, they're too good of a defensive team, and we continue to stay true to ourselves, drive, get into the paint. But there's so many factors that play into winning or losing a game. And I'd say we controlled the things that we could and obviously didn't really focus on the things outside of our control, like the players we don't have and the free throws that we didn't get. So So, the Liberty have struggled a lot with their effort, their turnovers. I mean, they had some turnover issues as well. The Lynx did too.
Yes.
I'd say this game was pretty evenly matched with the exception of the free throws.
Right. That's pretty much puts a stamp on it for from the New York side of things. It's kind of hard to make an argument for 33 free throws to 8. The counter I was going to say was like, well, the Lynx did New York a favor by missing 10 of them, which you're not going to see a lot. Although Jessica Shepard and Alana Smith both not having great years at the free throw line. But with that aside, this did feel like a game that was going to go in New York's favor. Once the Lynx led by as many as 15, 30-15 at one point after a Courtney Williams 3, went into the halftime locker room up just 5, 38-33, and then New York came out in the third quarter and really pressed the issue. And you've watched this team all year, Jackie. I've watched Minnesota all year. It didn't feel like the feel in the arena didn't feel like this was one that the Lynx were in control of. How do you feel the Liberty kind of shifted things in that sort of late second quarter, early third quarter area to kind of at least put themselves in a position to win this game when early it looked like this was going to be a Lynx blowout?
I think New York understood that their process was pretty good. It was just open looks were not falling. That was, Leonie Fibish has a bunch of wide open looks from 3 at the rim, doesn't fall. Sabrina Ionescu had open shots from deep, didn't fall. There was some congestion that I think was really well done by the Lynx in that first quarter, but JJ had a wide open 3. She just sort of missed it. So I think they were patient in the first half, and they were like, our process is good. We just have to continue to execute our offensive process. And as a result, that started to happen. I do think defensively, they picked up their energy in that second quarter. There was a lot of scrambling that was happening. You would see 2 players on the ball. You'd see Kennedy Burke, Maureen Johannes sort of hedging to Natisha Heidemann, making the Lynx ball handlers feel uncomfortable. But sometimes at the other end of that, there wasn't enough good communication to make sure that coming out of those hedges, that people were going to rotate to other players. And I think we really saw that in the fourth quarter. In the final 2 minutes or 2 or 3 minutes when the Lynx went on that 12-2 run, it was just, the defensive communication wasn't great. Natasha Cloud was rushing things, a critical turnover. I'm trying to remember which Lynx player caught it, but was it Bridget Carlton?
I think it was Bridget Carlton, yeah.
That was a huge steal from her. I mean, Cloud threw it right to her, but she was in the right place at the right time. But Brondello said post-game that in that second quarter and into the third, the Liberty started to execute the scout defensively much more intentionally than they did in the first quarter. I also think they were more up to touch on Kayla McBride, with the exception of that late three-pointer where, again, they were scrambling and Jonquel Jones was late to the rotation. Kayla McBride hits the 3 that wins the Lynx the game, essentially.
Right. That was kind of what I had written down all game in at different times, because McBride was fantastic when these teams last got together on Sunday. Dejanay was much more effective in that game than she was today. And it really felt like Liberty was like, all right, we're not going to let your wings beat us. And that worked for a while. It was a really effective part of Brondello's game plan, I thought. We're going to get more into the weeds on that and some of the other things we noticed in today's game and what it might mean for Tuesday's game. Because, of course, these teams are playing again on Tuesday night, just because why not? Let's play every day, Jackie. That's what I say. We will get into all those things right in the second segment, right after this. We have all been there, logging on early, and waiting forever for concert tickets to go on sale, only to use your spot for a show that you have been dying to see. Live music should be about making memories, not dealing with the stress of ticket shopping. That's where Game Time comes in. Game Time makes getting concert tickets faster and easier than ever. Prices actually drop as it gets closer to showtime, and you can save up to 60% off with their killer last minute deals. I talked to a number of different fans at the game today who use Game Time to get into the building. Another great sellout. Obviously, the atmosphere when these two teams get together is fantastic. If you are in New York and looking to go to that Liberty Lynx game on Tuesday night, use Game Time and take the guesswork out of getting tickets and take the guesswork out of buying concert and show tickets for the future with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. All right, Jackie, let's talk a little bit more about what we saw today and what it might mean on Tuesday. Dejanay Carrington ran wild in New York on Sunday, and McBride and Bridget Carlton had pretty big games there as well. When Carrington was first acquired here in Minnesota, kind of a constant talking point was about how much easier she can make things for McBride, for BC. She can take their defensive assignments, allowing them to, apply their trade defensively elsewhere, open up things more a little bit. Up until that McBride deep three, none of the three of them had really gotten things going much offensively. McBride did have a deep three to start the game, but felt like a long time in between those shots. So just what did you see from the Lynx in watching this game, and how do you think New York was able to defend at least that trio more successfully than the last time these two teams got together?
I mean, I think there was much more intention to be guarding Kayla McBride. I mean, you saw, I believe Leonie Fibish was mostly on her, and you had Natasha Cloud on Courtney Williams, which I don't think that's been an advantageous situation for New York, just because Cloud is very fast. She's not as long. And so sometimes what you see happen is, we know Courtney uses her bounce, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so when, I believe they're both around the same height. Are they both 5'10"?
Yeah. Cloud always looks taller when they're next to each other. So she might have an inch so on, but they're roughly the same size.
I mean, I think Natasha Cloud is a little bit more muscular. I think that's part
wiry,
of it.
A little bit.
Yes. But I think, having Leonie Fibish on Kayla McBride, having her chase her around really made a difference. I mean, I think there was a lot of switching on Kayla McBride, just a lot of arms in her face, making it just really difficult for her to move in the way that she does. Mm-hmm. I think, Courtney Williams, the Liberty seemed almost fine with allowing Courtney Williams to hit her typical shots, which are those mid-range pull-ups. And she hit a lot of them. Yeah. I think, to me, it looked like that was the game plan. And if you take a look at the shot charts, I mean, the Lynx took a lot of mid-range twos. And so, in today's game, it worked. But if we're looking at the future, it's sort of like, well, what if it doesn't? What if Courtney is not hitting like that? And Terry, correct me if I'm wrong, but you've seen that happen before, where just, she's taking these they're good shots for her because she's so good at it. But when you think about the percentages, sometimes it's like, well, you'd rather go to the rim and, be a bit closer to the rim, try to draw some contact. And sometimes Courtney, even before she thinks to pass the ball, she sort of goes right up into that motion. It rattles off the rim, and then a team, blow by in transition.
Yeah.
So I think defensively, the Liberty were okay with allowing Courtney to be Courtney, if that makes
Yeah.
sense. And to a degree, it did backfire. It
Mhm.
did. I mean, she was their leading scorer, but I also think you have to take a look and see, okay, the Lynx had 4 players in double digits. New York had 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. Goodness.
6, yeah.
So I guess when you're talking about looking forward to Tuesday and just
Mhm.
sort of the game in New York that was played when Dejanay Carrington had a great showing versus the game on Saturday when we were recording, it very much so was sort of like, two heads of one person, night and day. It was very different.
Yeah.
The Lynx bench really won them that game. And then today it was the Liberty's bench that really showed out.
Yeah.
You had Maureen Johannes not just doing her usual, but you had her playmaking as well
Yeah.
in really important moments for New York.
Right.
But I don't know what you thought about the Courtney Williams performance and sort of how you saw New York defending, or
Mhm.
what did you make of what she was able to do?
Yeah, it felt like a quintessential Courtney Williams performance. We've seen that go great, and we've also seen it go poorly. Game 5 of last year's WNBA Finals is one that sticks out as what can happen when that kind of approach doesn't go great. But I think what Coach Reeves said after the game was Courtney is very, very good at recognizing moments when she needs to be more aggressive and kind of make herself the main character. And in a game like today, where offense wasn't coming from a ton of other places, I think she did a great job at pressing the issue and understanding it, and making sure that she needed to score because a lot of other players weren't scoring for the Lynx offense. And then that opened things up in the fourth quarter. I think kind of where the key for it was Lan had 10 of her 14 points in the fourth quarter. Jessica Shepard had 7 of her 17 points in the fourth quarter. And Reeve talked a lot post-game about playing through the bigs and how that kind of opened up the rest of the floor. So it's easy to say like, oh, it was a great game because it worked, and it did today. But I don't know if we'd be having the same conversation if that performance by the bigs in the fourth quarter went differently.
Oh, you nailed it. I could not agree more. I mean, the Liberty's main slippage was during that 12-2 run where they just were. I'm going to have to watch it again, but based on
Yeah.
what we heard post game, they were messing up some of the pick and roll coverages. Again, there wasn't communication on the backside. Sabrina Ionescu sort of said in that second game that we played the Lynx, or that they played against the Lynx in New York, the Liberty were not focused for that entire second half. And she said, well, in today's game, we weren't focused for those final 2 minutes. And so, yeah, it definitely begs the question. It begs the question, can the Lynx win with that same formula? Obviously, Nafisa Collier I don't know. No one seems to know if she will be back on Tuesday. Brianna Stewart probably will not be back on Tuesday, although she probably really wants to be back
I
on
bet.
Tuesday.
Yeah. That's where I think talking about, because these teams have played each other now 3 times in less than 3 weeks, and they're going to play again. And, they have 2 of the best players on the planet on their teams who are not playing. So it's really hard to talk about the matchup on Tuesday alone, and also what this might look like in the playoffs or the finals. Be like, all right, well, what if Minnesota has Fee back, and what if New York has Stewie back? Both have injuries where we do kind of assume that they'll be back, but just especially with the injuries in WNBA this year, I don't think we can just assume like, oh, we'll get a finals of 100% Lynx and 100% Liberty. Like there's going to be something. So I doubt we see either of the two unrivaled founders on the court on Tuesday. For Fee, I think I'm kind of looking towards that game in Indy on Friday. I believe that's August 22nd. That's the second game of what I believe to be the final back-to-back of the season. So I think Tuesday seems soon to me, and I don't think you'd bring her back for the first game of a back-to-back, especially with the cushion in the standings right now. But I am very fascinated by this game on Tuesday, regardless of who plays.
I mean, the Liberty are going to be playing angry. They played angry in this game, I believe, especially in those second and third quarters. And again, in the first quarter, they weren't horrible. The shots just weren't falling.
Right.
They were forcing the shots that they wanted to force. They wanted to run Kayla McBride off the three-point line. They wanted to be very aggressive with her. And, they did not – the Lynx bench did not make as great of a dent as it did on Sunday at Barclays Center.
For sure.
So there were some adjustments made. I'm going to assume there are going to be even more adjustments made on Tuesday.
Of course. I'm fascinated to see how the Lynx bench responds to, because they played well in the first quarter and then kind of dropped off. We'll talk about that and put a bow on this episode right here on Locked On Women's Basketball. All right, Jackie, one more thing I want to ask about, and I know we got just the waning seconds of availability for this episode. Not only did Jonquel Jones not have a point in today's fourth quarter, she didn't take a shot, and she didn't play for the entire fourth quarter, but it was about 7.5 minutes. Now, my latest written piece for the Next is all about how Alana Smith should win Defensive Player of the Year. And even without Lan, the Lynx are a pretty good defensive team. It's pretty well documented. And post-game, Lan refused to take, all the credit as she does. But something I've noticed in these previous the first two games that the Lynx won, Jonquel got 7 shots both times. And both times shot above 50% from the field. And in today's game, she got 11 shots, and all of them came first through third quarter before knocking another shot in the fourth quarter. So while we had the Lynx kind of working their way out of the mud, playing through the bigs on one side, we have Jonquel not getting a shot on the other. And now I'm looking at this, through sort of the Lynx being the team I observe. But is this something that has been happening this year with the Liberty? Because a handful of Liberty fans just in the minute since the game ends have been, in my mentions on Bluesky being like, yes, we should play through Jonquel more. And I'm just kind of curious how you saw that today and how that relates to how she's played the rest of the season.
To be quite honest, I'm going to need to watch some of it again. But based on what you're saying, I mean, I just think the Liberty are missing – again, we talk about missing Nafisa Collier and missing Breanna Stewart. But I think emotionally, Breanna Stewart brings a calm to this team. Breanna Stewart brings almost an unwavering confidence to this team. She knows when to get JJ a touch. I mean, I think there were moments where Natasha Cloud was just running like 99 miles an hour. And the lack of, how do I want to put this? I believe Alana Smith is the Defensive Player of the Year frontrunner. I believe that so much because I've seen her play against Jonquel so much. But at the same time, the Liberty should have been much more intentional in getting her a touch. Getting her a touch doesn't necessarily mean getting her a shot. Getting her a touch means bringing in the defense to create space. So, again, I will have to watch this over, but Jonquel Jones is an offensive hub. She doesn't have to score to be impactful. If we take a look at her stat line, she only had 2 assists. And it's like, only 2 assists? When Jonquel Jones is at her best, she has more than 2 assists. And so, when you get the ball in her hands, she can see over defenses.
Yeah.
So I think that's part of it too. It's not just about getting her a shot. It's about allowing her to play make, allow her to see things, allow her to be patient. I think there was a clip that's been going around the internet where the Lynx were playing excellent defense and the Liberty still scored on it because they were so patient in the half court. They moved it, I want to say maybe 5 or 6 times, every time the Lynx rotated. Okay, we're going to move it again. Okay, we're going to move it again. And then Jonquel made a 3 sort of right near where Cheryl Reeve was standing. And you could sort of see her go,
Right. I know exactly what shot you're talking about. That was a fantastic shot.
It was.
Yeah.
It absolutely was. I mean, Jonquel is shooting over 40% from 3. If you get her a touch, she draws the defense, and then someone else is open for a higher percentage shot.
Right. There aren't too many players in the league, in any league, that have this sort of gravity on offense with Jonquel. And as you mentioned, being able to see over the defense too. So maybe that is something that just naturally comes back when Stewie's out there, and just the calming presence of knowing just who needs to touch the ball when. That 3 that you're talking about, where we're seated in the media area, that's close to a spot where we have a terrible look, but her footwork played her into a spot where we have like a great look. And I just only watched her feet on that little kind of like dribble shuffle she did. And to be that size and that athletic and have that kind of footwork is just, it's not fair. I felt like, this is probably how everyone feels like watching Fee all the time too. But of course, Jonquel has, been doing this forever and has been shooting 40% from 3. Real quick, because I do know that we need to go. There was a fair amount of sloppiness in this game, or maybe just because I felt both defenses played pretty well. A bit uncharacteristic of a game where both teams finish in the 80s. I thought both teams' best basketball is on display on that end of the floor. At this point, do either of these 2 teams need to worry about anything in regards to long-term ambition? And I keep the Lynx in there because there were moments today that we've touched on where they weren't playing great, and it kind of looked like the Liberty's game to lose. So,
Which it
Liberty
was.
or Lynx? Yes.
I think both of them have something to worry about coming from this. I think the Liberty have a little bit more because, I think this week for the Lynx was huge because how many practices did Dejanay Carrington get? 2?
3.
She got 3 full practices.
And 2 days off. 2 days off and 3 full practices in a mid-season week in the WNBA. It's pretty crazy.
So Emma Miesemann has only had 1 practice, yet she's played in
5 games now with the Liberty.
I will guess. I mean, I will do a quick fact check, but the point I'm making, and there were moments this afternoon where I was sort of like, wow, like if Emma just had another practice, maybe this wouldn't have happened. There was a behind the back pass that Maureen Johannes intended for Emma, and she didn't know. So it's 7 games. Emma Miesemann has played in 7 games.
7 games in 1 practice.
1 practice. But that pass from Maureen Johannes, which was it ended up being a dead ball turnover. If those 2 spent more time playing together, maybe something doesn't happen like that. Right. So when it comes there, I have more Liberty worries than Lynx worries. I'll lay out the Liberty ones first, and then I will get into the Lynx ones. With the Liberty, it's a matter of, will they have enough time to really make this work? They do have some practices coming up. I believe it's 2 or 3 that are coming up.
Huge.
And then they're going to be absolutely huge. But also you're reintegrating Breanna Stewart, which, that's going to take work as well. It's going to take more effort. It's going to take more focus. And those are two things that the Liberty have really struggled with. They've struggled with focus during crunch time. They've struggled with doing the fundamentals, like boxing out. They've struggled with just sort of having that extra fight without Breanna Stewart, which Breanna Stewart's motor, I do not think is studied enough. Sure, she's, her shot profile has changed, but Breanna Stewart has one of the most impressive motors that I have ever seen. She just knows the different ways to make plays even when the offense isn't clicking at all. The fact that she can guard players 1 through 5 is also quite outstanding. And, you don't see that with all players around the league. I think Stewie's defense is very understated. But the point is, the Liberty have a lot of work to do. They have a ton of work to do. More work to do, I think, than the Minnesota Lynx. Although, I'm not letting the Lynx go unscathed here. And I think we sort of alluded to this earlier, which is when a defense in the playoffs mucks a lot of stuff up, what are the Lynx going to do when they can't just play pretty basketball? Who is someone who is just going to go and create offense? And I'm just not sure if that's going to be Dejanay Carrington. I don't know.
And if it's Courtney Williams, it can go great or it can go not so great. Question for, that has, plagued sports fans for centuries, and we'll see it play out here in the coming weeks. And Jackie, thank you so much for being here, for being flexible. And I'm sure I'll talk to you more this week, as we have, it's a day that ends in Y. So the Lynx and Liberty are playing basketball against each other. Thank you, listeners, for making Locked On Women's Basketball your first listen today. For your second listen, find the Locked On NBA podcast, where there is no offseason. Doug, Matt, and Hayes keep you up to date on contract negotiations, rumors, everything you need to know to be the most informed NBA fan. And Locked On NBA on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.